So, I paid my wife to adventure into a new country to start fresh and finally establish her feet so she can start her lifelong career she's always wanted to. I said, hey, just listen. I'll meet up with you in a few months once I can get all my stuff in ordeal, and we'll finally have a new life in a different country. Well, guess what? She ghosted me and I never heard from her again until I finally got in contact with her. But oh boy, things are not looking good.
My name's Ahmed, and this is a story of love, betrayal, and karma when they finally got what was coming to them. Although we were brought together in an arranged marriage, Fatima, she never hated me for it, something that I knew from shared experiences with other friends and colleagues could have made our lives a living hell from the start. The wedding ceremony was the first time we've ever met, and although there was no love at first sight moment after getting to know each other, well, love did grow between us, and we maintained a healthy and happy relationship together. This also pleased my parents, Ahmed Sr., and Aisha, for while I'm eager to follow tradition and custom, were equally nervous about the match. My mother especially, who until recently I had relied on for nearly everything. Contrary to what you may think, I never felt like my parents had forced or trapped me in the arrangement. We were all under weight and pressure of peers in the community, as well as 100 years of history. Although my wife and I were both reluctant, we followed through with the marriage and then started to enjoy ourselves afterwards throughout the evening. Following a wonderful evening, my wife and I spent the next few weeks at our vacation, just getting to know each other, and I found her to be as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside. Upon our return, we began our married life by moving in together, and the rest came naturally. Now, it seemed Fatima was the only one relying on me. A year passed before we faced the first hurdle of our marriage. Fatima, being a very intelligent and gifted scientist, worked at a large research facility outside the city while I repaired cars and machinery downtown for a living. But we both loved our jobs. Fatima specialized in the field of microbiology during her studies at college, and so had been included on the roster of employees invited to a new working scheme. Too excited to wait until the evening, she called me on her lunch break, just to explain that she was being given the opportunity to work overseas in the US of A for a reputable pharmaceutical company, a move that would uproot us from our lives completely, but one Fatima was still desperate to do to pursue her passion further, despite my initial reluctance to such a change. It was a stroke of good luck that this happened now while we're both young and without children, giving us the freedom to embrace the opportunity and hope for the best. In my attempt to be a good friend and a good husband, I obliged her request and began to ask my family members about the situation at hand. You see, it wasn't as easy, but after much convincing, I was able to borrow small amounts from my brother, my uncle, and my father, totaling a massive sum. The repayments I could start with were small at first, but I expected my interest rate may be a little fair than that I would have otherwise found at a bank. While my parents were understandably hesitant about the big move, they encouraged me to do what was best for us, and with their blessing, I no longer had any reason to worry. Well, I surprised her the next evening with a plane ticket. We agreed earlier that she would go over first and I would join her just after a few weeks, giving me time to leave my job amicably and raise funds to my own trip. Fatima now had the means to follow her dream without worrying about anything as she settled into her new life in the USA. I helped pack her bags and drop her off at the airport, ready to join her as soon as I could, knowing that her flight would also take nearly a whole day to reach its destination. So, I upgraded her seat to business class, as I knew it was not a journey that we would be making often. This also gave me a little more peace of mind, as I knew she would be well looked after, easing any nervousness about being away from me on her big adventure. When I took her to the airport, I offered to sit at the gate with her until the plane was ready to board, but she assured me that she would be fine on her own and just jokingly shooed me away. Despite her insistence, I still found myself sitting in the airport cafe half an hour later with my eyes glued to the flight tracker on my phone. I just worried a lot about her, and only felt ready to leave when I knew she was safely on the plane and, well, merrily out of India. I fell back into my bed when I got home and woke up sometime in the late afternoon. The rest of the day I spent trying to just keep my mind busy by watching television and talking to friends. Overcome by the silence in our apartment, I had dinner with my parents that night and returned late, falling into bed once more, and by the time I woke up late Sunday afternoon, I immediately opened up my phone but found no missed calls or text messages from my Fatima. Based on the time, I would have expected her to have landed by now, but hey, maybe I was wrong. Checking the flight tracker again, I saw that her flight had landed 2 hours ago. Pushing down any growing paranoia, I sent her a text message and waited for the reply, assuming she was probably just exhausted from the jet lag or too busy with her first day to check in. I waited until the evening to try to contact her again. From the time difference that, should put it around noon for her, so I expected at least she would be awake. On my first try, the call immediately went to her voicemail, as did the second and third. I was then informed that the voicemail inbox was full, so I was unable to leave any more messages and I was just left utterly confused. If her phone was off or broken, what else could she do? After an uneasy 30 minutes of more waiting, I tried again. No answer. The worry was now setting in. Next, I logged into my social media account, but again found no confirmation of her safe arrival. Oddly, I also realized her profile was not showing up anywhere I looked, where usually she would be a very avid poster. But everything was wiped clean. Following an old link, she sent me a photo of her profile. I came upon an error that suggested, "You cannot see this profile anymore, because you've been blocked." Blocked? I was dumbstrucken. I was struck in denial for so long that I ignored all the warning signs that I had today. All this time I had been worrying sick over her supposed disappearance that I missed the obvious only answer. She just didn't want me to contact her. After getting over the initial shock, I was left feeling curious and angry. If nothing else, I just had to find out why my Fatima had done this to me. The problem now was how. Cycling through our list of mutual contacts, I messaged a few people I thought to be her closest friends. But each one I asked was just as baffled as I was, unless they've been told to act that way. I hid my worry from my family, telling them that Fatima was fine and happy in the US of A. While I carried on looking, I suddenly found myself unsure of whom or what I could even trust at this point. Well, I could trust Fatima and her groups, maybe, leaving me to turn my search inward. Sorting through our apartment, I dug out a box of things that she left behind, looking for clues or hidden treasures among her items. I found a small journal, which luckily she used to scribble in notes such as passwords. Going through the list, I eventually found the right one and was logged into her social media. Just as I'd expected, her account had not been deleted. I was still trying to come up with reasons for her absence, but this cemented the proof that I've been blocked when I saw new postings of her in the US. In the latest post, she was also posing with a man who was tagged as Daniel. A new life. Rage filled me and boiled over within me as my desire to revenge outgrew my feelings of abandonment or pity. I was speechless and could not believe what I've seen. Looking through her messages, I found that Fatima had been chatting with a guy in the US called Daniel, behind my back for nearly a year. She had known Daniel nearly as long as she knew me, and what had started as a casual conversation had quickly evolved into flirting and deep romance. Her language and behavior, incredibly different from anything I'd seen from her before. Spiraling down the rabbit hole, I investigated further, discovering that she's been conspiring with Daniel to find a way to move to the US without me, so they could, quote, be together. Though they were happy enough to trick me into paying for everything, then leaving me drowning in a mountain of debt. Everything she had told me about the job before had been a dirty lie. She had no intention of ever coming back. So, in fury, I threw the laptop across the room and shattered its screen on the wall. Showering my bedroom in the glass, Fatima had tricked me, betrayed me, and used my and my family's money to facilitate her new life with her secret lover. What's worse is I was alone in my grief, feeling too ashamed and insecure to tell my family about my wife's betrayal for fear of what they might say to me. Well, gathering as much composure as I could, I cleaned the mess before going out. What started as one beer at the bar then devolved into a night of heavy drinking and questionable decisions. I was walking home at 2 a.m. when the despair hit me the hardest. Steering me staggering onto the open highway, I made my peace with God and lay down on the road, waiting to the end, waiting for release. As I heard a car approaching, I laid still. It then noticed me and took a harsh turn around me, beeping madly at me all along the way. I suddenly found myself on my feet again in a panic, as if only realizing what I was doing, so I scrambled off the road and fell into a ditch. Laughing at my own stupidity, and if I took my own life now, Fatima would win. She'd get away with her betrayal and have a happily ever after with Daniel, oh so far away from here. At the end of this one thought kept me going, kept me alive. Sadness turned into anger and vengeance. Fatima may have planned everything up to this point, but she had no idea what was coming for her. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Today's story is revenge, lover's paradise, and absolute betrayal. Guys, there's multiple updates. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button because there is a story coming up soon that is 8 updates, 2 hours long, and it's one of the craziest mother-in-law dramas I've ever narrated. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that upcoming video, guys, and let's jump into update number 1. The next day, I did not go to work. Instead, after shaking off a nasty hangover, I bought a new laptop and got down to business. You see, a few hours after her initial disappearance/escape, I managed to track down some information on her mysterious new lover, Daniel. According to basic information listed publicly, he's 30 years old, an entrepreneur from New York, and supposedly lives in a very lavish lifestyle. While it would be too suspicious to message or confront him directly, after scrolling through the photos on his social media, I found a mention of previous girlfriends. And yeah, many previous girlfriends. It was encouraging to see that Daniel changed his partners nearly as often as he changed his clothes. And from reading his conversation with Fatima, I could tell that he was a sweet-talking playboy that probably lied as easily as he breathed. It would not be long until Fatima was just another X on his list. I nearly felt bad for her when I found out the truth, wondering if she would just crawl back to me afterwards and apologize. I pushed such thoughts out of my head. I could not let myself get sappy and sentimental when she didn't deserve it. All she deserved now is cold-hearted revenge, just like the coldness that she showed me. Going through their conversation, start to finish, for what felt like the 100th time, I followed a link to the job posting from Daniel to learn more about her new role. It was advertising a much higher salary than her job here as a senior researcher. Not going to lie, it did look impressive though. It also required a lot more qualifications to do it, one being at least 5 years of industry experience with credible references. Something that did not click right for me. Fatima had just been studying 5 years ago, so how could she have that much experience already? I wondered to myself. Doubting my memory, I called a mutual friend who went to college with her, and he was able to verify the same thing I did not explain why I was curious. There's no way Fatima, who had been working for that long, and now all I had to do was prove it. But if she lied about her age to get the job, how did she receive a reference to back that up? Checking her conversation with Daniel again, I saw that he provided a business email address and a different cell phone number after mentioning the job. Daniel was conspiring to get her the job by acting as her professional reference. This was starting to become very useful. Previously racked with feeling hopeless and unable to respond or retaliate to Fatima, I now felt I had found the means to bring her down. Just as she had hidden the details from me and gone so far as to fake her qualifications, I'm sure her new company would not take that news kindly, if they so happened to have an anonymous email divulging all her dirty little secrets sent to them. Would she be fired? Would she be deported? I was excited to enact my plan, then sit back with some buttery popcorn and watch her fall from grace. Update number 2. Before going sleep, I put on the coffee machine and sat fixed to my desk for most of the night, pulling all the energy and hate I could muster into this plan. When I was finally done with the final version, I put together an email and everything I could find about Fatima, revealing her betrayal and deception to her new company. Throughout the night, I had prepared many drafts but scrapped them after they diverted into a rant of clear bias against Fatima. Though I was angry more than anything, I was smart enough to know if I wanted to be taken seriously, it needed to be clear, concise, and to the point, no bullcrap. Finally, I attached her work portfolio, her driver's license, and screenshots of her conversation with Daniel, where he agreed to act as a reference to her qualifications. Just to avoid any backlash on me or my family, I sent it anonymously from a temporary email address, citing myself as one of Daniel's friends instead. My only regret was that I would not be present to see her melt when the news eventually reached her. I could only hope that they believed me and acted, but I was determined to keep trying until she was properly punished. After some light prompting from my boss, I drank 3 cups of coffee and left my apartment to finish my shift. Keeping busy helped to take my mind off events, and by the time I returned home a few hours later, I fell asleep in front of the television, missing a notification on my phone. Another series of notifications woke me up sometime later. The room was dark except for the beam of light emitted from my phone with every single buzz. Opening the screen, I covered my eyes to prevent blindness, slowly adjusting to the light. Well, I was getting notifications on social media conversations held between Fatima and Daniel. I stayed logged into her account after the first day, and it looked like it was now paying off. Fatima had tried to call Daniel, but it skipped to his voicemail. She looked extremely stressed and upset as she typed out a frenzy of one-word messages, each one getting more frantic and poorly spelled than the other. It looked like Fatima was pulled into a meeting to discuss the secrets that I leaked to her boss, and she was freaking out about it. I sat fixed on the phone, elated with her suffering, all the while Daniel seemed nowhere to be seen. Her sadness echoed into the void. He appeared 10 minutes later to see 100, and yeah, I mean 100, missed messages and a number of missed calls. Fatima, who initially was distraught and overwhelmed, was now angry at his lack of presence and nonchalance to her problem. As the conversation erupted quickly into an argument, Daniel launched back at her for, quote, being needy and causing grief, so much that she abruptly ended the conversation and broke up with Fatima on the spot. Daniel, the true-to-life playboy, as I expected, had quickly moved on to his next target. It was at this point Fatima went on a public rant to her followers/friends about her situation while I left to make some breakfast. But when I returned, not only did I find out that I had been unblocked by Fatima, but she also reached out to try to speak to me with a unreasonably casual, "Hey, how are you?" As if the problems of the past were just a dream, and I left her to read while I finished my breakfast and blocked her. I was not ready to talk to her, especially as a rebound from her initial betrayal, and I left it like that. Update number 3, 3 weeks later. Hey guys, it's been 3 weeks since Fatima was fired from her job and abandoned by Daniel, leaving her rightfully miserable and alone in a land that no longer wanted her. Throughout the first week, she still tried to contact me with many missed calls and messages, though I deleted them each time without any chance of replying. Better to leave her stuck in her isolation. Especially since I was still paying off the large family loan I took out just to pay for her to move to the US, only to be immediately destroyed and left in response to my kindness. Despite the loan, it isn't all bad news here. With the closure I wanted out of our failed relationship and the revenge finally achieved, I've begun to move on with my life. I gave my parents a long overdue explanation of my behavior, sparing absolutely no detail on Fatima in the process. They were shocked, assuming her to be a nice girl that she previously appeared to be. She'd gotten used to wearing that mask when she was around us. They also had plenty of time to berate me. Not for the shame of the divorce, but not for telling them sooner. They felt guilty for my suffering when it was not a burden that I should have had to manage alone. I've also started to trust other people again, reconnecting with an old friend from school, Zara. It goes without saying, but I've directly declined any more arranged marriages, not able to put up with any more strangers. I still have some recovery ahead of me, but I hope by the time love finds me again, I'll be ready for it. Update number 4, 6 months later. Well, I was coming home from work one evening. I found a woman sitting by my front door. Not thinking much of it, I got closer. The woman who I initially expected to be a vagrant turned out to be Fatima, though much dirtier and disheveled than she looked when we last saw her, and when she left for her new life. Noticing me, she crawled over and began to clutch at my leg in an awkward series of dramatic apologies between the sobbing she was doing. Fatima spun me into another web of lies. Supposedly, after reaching the US, her phone died and her new apartment was without internet, leaving her unable to contact me until very recently. Being isolated in such a different country was too much to handle, and so after all her savings and wages, she immediately quit and flew back home to be with me. When she stopped speaking, I made no reaction or reply. Leaving her to dwell in the silence, I told her I knew about Daniel and I knew about all the lies. Well, she initially just didn't even want to listen to what I was saying until I started to mimic the messages they sent to each other. Now she knew she could not bluff her way out of it. She began to beg and sob again, asking how she could earn my forgiveness. My door opened behind her as Zara left the apartment to peek the drama unfolding outside. Surprised to find it was me, though she was never one of Fatima's friends, I talked about her long enough that she recognized her as well. Without answering, I pushed past her to greet Zara. In the months since my abandonment, Zara and I had started dating. And though I was still technically married to Fatima, my heart did not think that way anymore. Turning back to the crumbled mess of a woman on the floor, I said, "If you really want to repay the damages you've done, there's one thing you could do." Fatima's eyes lit up in response, and she struggled to her feet, agreeing anything I wanted. Though noticeably now more cautious was Zara standing behind me. "I want a divorce," I said as I closed the door in her face. Zara and I had dinner, ignoring Fatima's crisis and assaults on our door like an injured animal. She left sometime later that night and luckily did not return. I later found out that my mother had been contacted by Fatima's parents concerning her return to the country. Turns out that after Fatima lost her job in the US, she left her apartment and went on the run to avoid deportation, though was later caught, arrested, and deported anyways. Since her return, her family now is aware of her deeds and the shame brought upon their family, have disowned her and cast her out of the home. Now, she seemingly just lives on the streets and has not contacted anyone else until she came begging for my favor. I made the biggest but best decision of my life and married Zara later that week. It was the start of a whole new life for us. I didn't care what happened to Fatima anymore, and she never bothered us again.
So this is like one of the one times in these type of stories where OP actually gets the better end of the stick. Ahmed had a really hard time just going ahead and leaving his wife after all that she did for him. Well, she just backstabbed him, and Fatima went ahead and tried to start a new life, but joke's on her because he's not taking her back. Guys, I want to hear exactly what you think of this story. Drop it in the comment section down below. Maybe somebody's been in a similar situation. Who knows? I would love to hear from you guys. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. It only takes a second to smash that subscribe button, and we have some massive stories coming out this week. I'm talking about a mother-in-law story that's going to knock your socks off. It's a complete saga story with every update, so if you don't want to miss out on that, hit that button and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a fantastic day.